Human history wasn't written solely through victories and inventions. It was also carved by the quiet cries of millions of lives that vanished in silence. No gunfire, no enemy in sight, just a cough, a sting, or a deadly handshake. In this video, we'll delve deep into the darkness of history, where pandemics once swept through humanity, the Black Death, when all of Europe held its breath. In 1347, a few merchant ships from the east docked at the Sicilian port. Most of the sailors on board were either dead or dying, and from the ship's hold crawled thousands of rats, carrying fleas infected with a deadly bacterium, Yersinia pestis. Within months, the plague had erupted across Europe. The infected started with high fevers, followed by swollen black lumps in their armpits or groins. Buboes, the mark of death. They vomited blood, slipped into agony, and died within 2 to 3 days. The spread was terrifying. A single infected person could pass the disease to an entire village with just a few greetings. In less than 5 years, an estimated 75 million people perished, around 1/3 of Europe's population. Corpses piled up, churches closed their doors, fields lay abandoned. From London to Florence, the entire continent was shrouded in the stench of death. People stopped burying their loved ones. They dumped the bodies into pits, tossed in quicklime, and fled. Doctors wore bird-like masks, believing poisoned air caused the disease. Some whipped themselves to beg for divine mercy. Jews were falsely accused of poisoning wells, sparking horrific massacres. And then, for reasons no one could explain, the plague gradually faded in 1351. But its scars never disappeared. It shattered the feudal system, upended religious faith, and opened the door to a new era, one where humanity stared death in the face and asked, was God truly silent? The Spanish flu, a silent killer, amidst war. In 1918, as World War I neared its end, the world exhaled in relief, unaware that another disaster was quietly creeping in. A flu, seemingly harmless, suddenly broke out. But this wasn't any ordinary flu. It was what would later be known as the Spanish flu. Within just a few months, the virus had reached every continent. Young and healthy people, soldiers, workers, students, began falling ill in massive numbers. Strangely, it was the strongest among them who were most likely to die. The virus triggered an overreaction in the immune system, unleashing a deadly cytokine storm inside the body. Patients' lungs filled with fluid. Their skin turned purplish-blue, and many died within mere hours of showing symptoms. Death came so swiftly. There was no time to be afraid. In Philadelphia alone, over 4,500 people died in just 1 week. Morgues overflowed. Streetcars were converted into makeshift hearses. Orphaned children wandered empty streets, calling out for their mothers, voices lost in silence. The total death toll is estimated between 50 to 100 million, up to 4 times the casualties of the war itself. And yet, during it all, the press remained silent. Warring nations censored news of the outbreak to preserve public morale. Only Spain, a neutral country, reported the truth. And so, the world mistakenly named the virus after it, the Spanish flu, a pandemic that claimed tens of millions of lives. And to this day, no one knows for sure where it began. Perhaps France, perhaps China. But some theories point to a military camp in Kansas, USA. Smallpox, through generations. Some things don't kill you instantly. They let you live, crippled, haunted, and afraid. Smallpox was one of them. One of the oldest and most persistent diseases ever recorded, it cast a shadow of terror across thousands of years of human history. The first symptoms were flu-like. Fever, fatigue, body aches. But within days, the patient's body would erupt with blistering red pustules, starting on the face and chest, then spreading everywhere. Those blisters darkened, oozed blood, and left permanent scars, if the patient lived. The death rate was horrifying. 1 in 3 died. And those who survived were often left disfigured, sometimes blind. Ancient people called it the burning curse of the gods. Unlike the swift blow of the Black Death or the Spanish flu, smallpox moved slowly, but relentlessly. For centuries, no one was spared. not pharaohs of Egypt, emperors of China, nor queens of Europe. In the 20th century alone, smallpox killed over 300 million people, more than any war in history. People tried everything: burning belongings, isolating the sick, bloodletting, praying. Nothing worked until one English doctor, Edward Jenner, noticed something unusual. Milkmaids who had caught cowpox never contracted smallpox. He took fluid from a mild cowpox sore and injected it into the arm of an 8-year-old boy. Weeks later, the boy was exposed to real smallpox and survived. That was the seed of the vaccine and the beginning of humanity's counterattack. It took nearly 200 years, but in 1980, the WHO declared smallpox eradicated. And yet, to this day, the virus still exists, locked away in 2 labs, one in the US, one in Russia. And sometimes people wonder, why keep it? HIV/AIDS, the silent killer of the 20th century. When the first deaths appeared in the US in 1981, people assumed it was a strange illness, affecting only a small minority. But that was merely the calm before the storm. A virus had begun to spread across the globe, quietly, without obvious symptoms, silently destroying from within. Its name was HIV, and the disease it causes is AIDS. This virus doesn't kill in days. It waits. It cripples the immune system, leaving the body so vulnerable that even the common cold could become a death sentence. Patients slowly waste away, their defenses collapsing. They die from illnesses that should have been easily treatable: pneumonia, skin fungi, rare cancers. In the 1980s, HIV/AIDS wasn't just a pandemic. It was a social verdict. Patients were shunned, stigmatized, considered unclean. Families turned away. Hospitals refused treatment. Many had to hide their illness until death alone. Over 40 million people have died from AIDS, and tens of millions still carry the virus. What's terrifying, HIV can lie dormant for years without symptoms. And you might not even know you have it until it's too late. Today, antiretroviral drugs allow many to live almost normal lives, but there's still no cure. HIV still lingers, not with the panic of before, but in silence. It continues to spread fear in the shadows. A single needle, an intimate moment, one careless second, could cost you your entire life. And perhaps what makes HIV truly terrifying isn't its speed or fatality rate, but the haunting feeling. You don't know where it is, you don't know who carries it, and you don't know if you might already be its host. SARS, the harbinger of a global viral age. In late 2002, in Guangdong Province, China, a man was hospitalized with a high fever, difficulty breathing, and a persistent cough. At first, doctors suspected severe pneumonia. But then, a nurse got sick, a doctor got sick, and within weeks, hospitals across the region were on red alert. The new disease was named SARS, Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. What made SARS dangerous wasn't just its fatality rate, around 10%, but its speed and unpredictability. A person could carry the virus without symptoms for days, unknowingly infecting entire hospitals, families, or an entire plane. One infected doctor traveled from Guangzhou to the Metropole Hotel in Hong Kong. From there, the virus followed travelers to Toronto, Singapore, Vietnam, in just a matter of days. For the first time, the world witnessed a borderless outbreak. No gunfire, no warning, no time to react. By mid-2003, there were 8,000 reported infections and 774 deaths. But the damage went far beyond the numbers. Asia's entire economy stalled. Airlines came to a standstill. Tourism froze. People wore masks, isolated themselves, and lived in a state of deep fear. In Vietnam, the Viet Phap Hospital in Hanoi became the epicenter. But from that very hospital, early efforts in isolation, contact tracing, and protecting healthcare workers helped contain the outbreak, making Vietnam the first country recognized by the WHO as having successfully stopped SARS. SARS didn't last long. Less than a year later, it vanished, but the scar it left behind still lingers. Because for the first time, humanity realized with a new virus in a hyper-connected world. It takes just one person in just one day to throw the entire planet into chaos. Cholera, death in a glass of water. Imagine this: you drink a cool glass of water on a hot summer day. A few hours later, your stomach twists in agony. You vomit. You suffer violent diarrhea. Your body dehydrates so quickly that your skin turns cold, your eyes sink, your lips turn gray, and then you die within a single day. That's how cholera has spread terror for centuries. Originating from the Ganges River basin in India, this disease erupted into its first major outbreak in the early 19th century. Since then, 7 cholera pandemics have swept across continents, killing millions. Cholera isn't spread through air or insects. It's far simpler and deadlier: contaminated water. One infected water source can turn an entire city into a mass grave. In 1854, London was thrown into panic. People were dying in waves, and no one knew why. Until a doctor named John Snow proposed a radical idea: the water might be to blame. He pinpointed a public water pump on Broad Street, where many of the victims lived, and removed the pump handle. The result was astonishing. Death rates dropped almost immediately. It marked a turning point in medical history, the birth of modern epidemiology. And yet, despite our understanding of how it spreads, cholera has not been eradicated. Outbreaks still simmer across Africa and South Asia, and it resurged in Haiti in 2010, killing thousands after a single storm. It serves as a chilling reminder. In the modern world, all it takes is a power outage, or a few days without clean water. And we could be back in the age of cholera in an instant. COVID-19, the silent successor to SARS. In 2003, the world was shaken by a name: SARS. A new coronavirus spread through the respiratory tract, killing nearly 800 people. But then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. Humanity exhaled, and the terrifying memory slowly faded. Nearly 2 decades later, a quiet air emerged: SARS-CoV-2, the virus that triggered the COVID-19 pandemic. In December 2019, in Wuhan, cases of a mysterious pneumonia began to surface. People called it a SARS-like outbreak. But within weeks, that similarity spread so fast, the world had to shut its doors. In just a few short months, crowded streets turned to ghost towns. Train stations, airports, cinemas, schools, everything frozen in time. Hospitals overflowed, doctors collapsed. Patients gasped for air. No one touched. No one said goodbye. COVID didn't just kill people, it killed connection. It unleashed an unprecedented health crisis, then rippled into economic, social, and psychological breakdowns. From dazzling cities like New York, Paris, Tokyo, to remote villages in Africa, nowhere was safe. Nearly 7 million lives lost, a chilling number. But more terrifying, we still don't fully understand this virus. Long COVID, new variants, the next wave. All reminders that this fight is far from over. And what haunts scientists most of all, if SARS was the warm-up, then COVID-19 was the opening shot. The only question now is, how terrifying will the next virus be? Ebola, when your own blood turns against you. We often think of enemies as coming from the outside: a bullet, a knife, or a stranger carrying disease. But with the Ebola virus, the killer is your own bloodstream. First identified in 1976 near the Ebola River in Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, this virus quickly planted a terror the world had never seen before. Unlike the flu, or even SARS and COVID, Ebola doesn't primarily spread through the air. It attacks the circulatory system directly. Inside the body, it breaks down capillaries and blood vessels, causing blood to leak everywhere, from the eyes, ears, nose, even through the skin. The infected slowly turn into a living pool of blood, bleeding uncontrollably. Eyes glow red like embers, skin darkens, then peels away. And when they cough or vomit, it's blood. Only blood. Ebola doesn't let you die gently. It turns your final moments into torture. In rural African villages, where outbreaks have hit the hardest, entire families have perished within days. Caregivers, just wiping a brow or feeding a meal, faced extreme risk. Many doctors died within days of treating patients, even in full protective gear. In 2014, a massive outbreak shook the world. Over 11,000 deaths, mostly in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. But what alarmed scientists even more, Ebola had no specific cure, no widely available vaccine, and it mutated quickly. One drop of blood, one cut, one hug, could be the end. And if you think Ebola is only Africa's problem, remember, there were confirmed Ebola patients who reached the US and Europe, carrying the nightmare in their lungs, one step away from sparking a global disaster. We've weathered countless storms of disease, but have we truly learned enough from the past? Could the next pandemic come from where we least expect it? In your opinion, which pandemic in history changed humanity the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your answer might just make someone see history in a whole new light.